Okay, this is going to be a very important video. I'm going to essentially talk about my approach to shadow work related to using archetypes, shadow archetypes. And I think a lot of you will gain a lot of value from this video, and it'll give you a lot of context when it comes to shadow work. It'll probably answer a lot of questions you may have. Um, so let's delve into it. So I have this document here that I'll kind of just go down and basically talk about this topic. First, we got to define what archetypes even are, and then we'll talk about how it pertains to shadow work. So archetypes. This is a definition straight from Google. Archetypes are universal, inherited patterns of human behavior and experience that reside in the collective unconscious, meaning we all have an understanding of this on an unconscious level. We're born into it. That's It's like part of the human experience, and because it's part of the human experience, when we come across it, we instinctively know its characteristics. So when we hear about, you know, the the magician, or we come across the idea of the hero, some part of us is like, I kind of understand what this archetype is all about. I understand what his motivations are, for example. Continuing on with the definition, they are pre existing fundamental symbols or images that shape our understanding of the world and guide our actions. Archetypes are not concrete entities, but rather predispositions that are activated by specific situations and events, influencing how we perceive and interact with them. Great definition. Now, I want to make a distinction when it comes to archetypes. There's the structural archetypes, and then there's the role based archetypes. What do I mean by that? Structural archetypes deal with your psyche, the levels of your psyche. And a perfect representation of that is Carl Jung's model of the psyche. Here, it's broken down by the persona, the ego, the self, which entails the entire thing, the shadow, anima, animus, which is the animus being the unconscious masculine side of the female, and the anima being the unconscious feminine side of the male. So, all these aspects, these archetypes, are psychic archetypes within us. And then there's the role based archetypes, which you could think of more externally based types of archetypes, like the king, the magician, the lover, the innocent, and the caregiver. So those are some things right there. For the majority of this video, I'll be talking about kind of story slash narrative based archetypes, and I'll also touch on obviously the shadow related to like psychic archetypes. And trust me, this will be probably easy to follow. I won't get too technical and jargony throughout this, because this video is for understanding. So it's very key. That's very key. So let's keep going. When it comes to story narrative based archetypes, you have to start with at least the 12 archetypes wheel. This wheel is so great in helping you helping just categorize archetypes in a broad manner, meaning there's like hundreds of different archetypes, like story narrative based archetypes out there, but this wheel helps you focus on just 12 core ones that a lot of the other archetypes are based out of. So, if you think of, for example, the warrior archetype, he's not here, but on this wheel, he encompasses traits of the hero, of the magician, of the outlaw, and you can even say of the everyman, for example. But this wheel kind of breaks it down and such like that. So, I'll kind of quickly go over what each archetype is all about. The innocent deals with the aspect of someone that is, of course, innocent. They have a certain wonder about the world, and they don't take themselves or the world too seriously. Children are a perfect example of the innocent archetype. And you can see that they're in the spiritual journey quadrant of this circle, because there is a level of innocence, open mindedness, letting go ness, not taking things too seriously in the spiritual journey. Continuing on, the sage, knowledge, knowing things, educating oneself, expressing that knowledge outward is an example of the sage archetype. Right now, my inner sage is coming out and explaining these various topics to you. In the spiritual journey, of course, knowledge is a key part of it. The explorer, freedom. You could say open mindedness and going outside your comfort zone. Your inner explorer helps you with that. When you have that integrated, you're able to take those risks. You're able to not stay in your comfort zone too much. And that's very important for growth. So those are the first three for the first quadrant. The second quadrant is about leaving a mark in the world. And we start with the outlaw who bends the rules. He doesn't follow rules. He has his own code of conduct and he has his desires and he's able to express that out. Bringing out your inner outlaw doesn't mean you're breaking the law. It just means you're not following conventional social norms because you understand that a lot of these social norms are just conditioning that's put out that doesn't always necessarily serve your best interest or your highest good. So the outlaw is able to liberate themselves from the shackles that society puts on him or her and moves forward on their journey. Very important if you have a life purpose you want to go towards. If you don't have enough outlaw in you, it's hard to break through. It'll be hard to break through. Continuing on, the magician, this person has power. He's able to change things. They're able to influence. They're able to impose themselves onto situations and make things happen. When you are programming your subconscious mind for newer belief systems, when you are shifting your identity to be someone different, that's your inner magician, right? You don't just make change in the practical sense in the physical world. You make change in the mental. You make change in the metaphysical realm too. So that relates to leaving a mark in the world. The hero, this individual is on a hero's journey. He's able to go through adversity and fight through adversity and conflict and come out on top. He has a goal in mind. And of course, the hero in the hero's journey, he develops skills. He has setbacks and he learns from those setbacks and he just keeps going. He develops mastery. And that's how he leaves a mark in the world. Continuing on, we're halfway. The lover is able to tap into their emotions. They're able to open up. They're able to be intimate, both romantically and platonically. They enjoy beauty, whether it's in other people or it's in themselves or it's in art, in music. This is what integrating your inner lover looks like. You're comfortable with intimacy. You're comfortable with seeing beauty. You can appreciate it. And that, of course, is how you connect with others. Continuing on, the jester is able to enjoy life, not take things too seriously, enjoy the pleasures of life, kind of similar to the lover. The jester is definitely less serious. And there are, of course, sub archetypes of the jester, like the fool, the trickster, etc. But connecting with others, as the jester, the person that's able to break the ice, the person that's able to just joke around. I mean, how comfortable do you make people when you're able to do that? Even strangers, very comfortable, and it's great for connection. The everyman, belonging, the common man, quote unquote. Some people, they elevate so much in life that they make a shadow out of the common man, out of being the everyman, and thus they can't relate to others as much, and they start losing that relatability or that connection with maybe family members and friends of the past or current friends even. It's because they, for some reason, find some uncomfortableness with being the everyman, being a normal person. So now moving on to providing structure in this wheel, we have the caregiver, being of service, taking care of other people. Nurses are perfect examples of the caregiver archetype. Oftentimes caregivers are very high in empathy, and they put others before themselves. Being of service to others. Ruler, the king, queen archetype, they're able to showcase control. And control isn't necessarily always a bad thing because control is a spectrum. There's obviously unhealthy, toxic control, and then there's healthy control. Healthy control is there's a group of people that you're leading, and you're the one that needs to come up with the plan and execute. And you need to make sure everyone's taken care of and good without being a tyrant. That would be unhealthy control. That's how you provide a structure. And then lastly, the artist, the innovator, someone that's putting something out, something new to the world. The trendsetter, he's himself. He doesn't care about people's opinions. He's going to put out his art. He's going to put out his music. He's going to put out his videos. He's going to put out his product or service. He's going to put out his personality. And then people pick up on it. He influences culture. He provides a new structure or a new way of doing things. So that's kind of the 12 archetypes wheel. And we're going to continue on in this conversation to what causes certain archetypes to be repressed. Why do people find it weird, for example, to own the side of them that is like to own their inner lover, to own their everyman, to own their innocent, their sage? Let's take a guy that was, very open-minded and fun, didn't take life too seriously as a kid. Why is he so serious by the time he hits 30 years old? Those are important questions to ask. And firstly, before I continue, I do want to say that all the archetypes are within us. It's just that some of us have some archetypes more accepted, and we have certain archetypes more repressed. And here are the reasons why we have certain archetypes repressed. First, it's obviously conditioning, whether by family, school, or religion. You're told this is good and this is bad, right? So maybe when you were young, you liked the idea of having power within, and then your mom told you that you know being powerful is bad. Only bad people are powerful. So you take that in, and because of that, you want to compensate. So what you do is you start to overemphasize or over-identify with your everyman, as in belonging with everybody else, and you identify a lot with your caregiver. You want to take care of people. You don't want to have power over people. So because of that, when situations call for you to be powerful, to show your power, or to learn about things that would help you accumulate power, you won't do it because why? You haven't owned your inner magician. So thus, there's a blockage there. And if there's an area of life where you need to tap into that, you can't. And you'll wonder, like, I just can't do it, or that's not me. That's what you might say to yourself. But that's not necessarily true. It's just what you've identified with through what? Conditioning. So another example is, growing up, a lot of us here don't be too sexual, or sexuality is bad, or, wait till marriage, whatever you hear. So thus you repress the lover. You repress the instincts in you that wants to express himself, right, or herself. Another example is when you hear "don't cry." Like if you're a guy, maybe you've heard growing up "man up." Thus you repress the innocent, because the innocent, the childlike kind of archetype here, they're able to cry because they don't take themselves, they don't take themselves too seriously, and they're not so ego identified, and they haven't necessarily even subscribed to certain cultural norms about what masculinity is yet. So they're able to do that. But if you're told, don't cry, now you can't tap into that. So if there are instances where you identify certain traumas that you've had, and you need to cry in order to release those emotional blockages, or let go of that trauma more, you won't be able to do it because you view that fundamentally as bad. And then also the anima, which is the feminine aspect of the male, you're not able to relate to feminine energy as much because you've demonized it subconsciously. That archetype isn't as integrated. Because typically, women are often more in touch with their emotions. You could talk biology and all of that, but a lot of it has to do with conditioning as well, where women are more accepting of a range of emotions compared to men. Now, the second reason why certain archetypes are repressed is because um, people often get over-identified with one archetype. So like let's say you're listening to your favorite music, and your favorite artist is like an outlaw. He just doesn't care. You want to be like him. So you really integrate the outlaw, and it gets to a point where it's not balanced, where it becomes toxic. It becomes over too much, because all of these archetypes have a toxic side to them. I'll get to that soon. So because of that, let's say you don't have the caregiver to balance that out, or you don't have the jester to not take yourself too seriously. Now um, you think you're just the outlaw from an identity standpoint, and thus that's all you kind of act out, and your life doesn't become balanced because fundamentally you aren't balanced. Remember, our lives are just a reflection of who we are. So other examples is if you're deeply identified with the hero, you may suppress the lover, intimacy, the child archetype, also connected to the innocent, vulnerability, or the mystic connected to the sage, which is surrender, a non-doingness. The hero, he needs to do. He's on his journey. He's on his life purpose. He doesn't have time for the simple things anymore. Well, now that can become very problematic. What if his life purpose goes away? He can't surrender. Now he's in turmoil because he's so over identified with being a hero. Next, trauma. Of course, trauma. You know, trauma may cause you to shut down certain archetypes associated with pain. It's the brain's natural protective behavior. So it'll do everything to stay away from something that has caused that trauma, that has caused either that emotional or physical pain and psychological pain. So after betrayal, you may disown the lover or caregiver. Maybe your friend betrays you, or your significant other betrays you, or something like that. You now can't tap into your lover or caregiver anymore because the last time you did that, the last time you accepted that side of you, you got hurt. It was traumatic. So that's why we repress certain archetypes, and that's why we have to continually do an inventory of like, what archetypes am I scared to own and accept as part of me? Because there's a lot of power in that archetype when I accept it and own it in a very positive way. Let's keep going here. This is just a table showing the shadow side of each archetype. Like I talked about, there's a archetypes are there's a spectrum to it. There's the toxic side of it, and then there's the non-toxic side of it, and archetypes can balance each other out. But in this table, actually, we're going to talk about how, like, the light and shadow side of the archetypes, meaning the light side being what the archetypes own, what the archetype owns, and then the shadow side being what it disowns. So the hero, he owns his courage and his will, but he disowns arrogance and burnout. He disowns the fact that, um, or he doesn't accept the fact that this is something that could come about when he's too much of a hero, essentially. He can get very arrogant. He can burn himself out. Maybe some of you lone wolves out there, like, you want to do everything yourself, but that could really burn you out. Continuing on, the caregiver, they're very compassionate, but what happens is they could be a martyr. They could maybe control too much. The lover, passionate and intimate, but they can maybe be obsessive, overly dependent, overly attached. That's when that lover doesn't become as balanced. Sage, a lot of wisdom, but guess what? Cold, detachment, superiority. How many people you've come across? They're really smart, but they seem so, like, obnoxious about their intelligence. It becomes a thing where you just can't really relate. Innocent, trust and faith, but naivety and avoidance. Ruler, order, and leadership, but they could get to tyranny and be a control freak. So that's why we look at other archetypes to balance the weaknesses of other archetypes. So, for example, the lover, if they're finding themselves being obsessive and dependent, well, guess what? If they have a life purpose that they can focus on, um, they could channel their attention onto something different, which makes them enjoy that thing and not be so dependent on, the person they're with to essentially uh, bring contentment into their lives. So to own an archetype means to acknowledge its presence, to make it, meaning you're like, it's here, it's within me. You make it conscious rather than letting it unconsciously control or sabotage you, as in you identify instances where the archetype is at play. So right now, as I'm speaking right now, my sage archetype is at play. and I've accepted that side of me. So thus I tap into that. But guess what? When I'm learning things, I have to do what? I got to be innocent. I got to be a child. I got to be open minded to information. And also have to be an explorer. I got to be going outside my comfort zone to take in new information too. If I'm too much of a sage, guess what? I think I know everything. Now, where's the growth? You see? So that's the thing there. Another one is use it consciously and intentionally when appropriate. So you become very conscious of when to tap into it. But honestly, when you truly integrate it, you don't even think about it. You just behave in that way. Let's give an example of this idea of owning an archetype. So the jester slash the fool. It's not about making jokes all the time, playing pranks and playing pranks all the time. Some people think that they're like, okay, so Jam, if I'm integrating my inner jester and fool, I'll prank my friends, I'll prank my girlfriend, my wife, I'll prank my mom, I'll prank my dad. Not exactly. It's about accessing your ability to be playful and not take life too seriously, and doing that consistently, and you being okay with it, you being okay with behaving in that way. It's also about being tested and still being able to do it. What I mean by that is, if you've integrated the inner jester and fool, okay, let's say you get adversity thrown your way. Are you able, maybe sometimes, are you able to make a joke out of it? Are you able to not take it too seriously? I'm not saying it if it's a serious situation, you don't take it seriously, but I'm saying, are you able to see like the joke that is life? Are you able to look back at your past mistakes and laugh? Are you able to both be an achiever related to, let's say, the hero, but also not take yourself too seriously? People like that, people that can do that are extremely magnetic. People that excel in a field, make things happen, but they don't take themselves too seriously. Those people are loved. So signs that you've disowned an archetype. You hate or feel triggered by people who embody it. So you see someone embodying the inner lover and you just have, made a serious shadow out of the lover. You're not going to like that person automatically. You see someone exhibiting power, you're not going to like that person. You see someone being a caregiver and being of service to others, and you're someone that hasn't accepted that within yourself or own that side of you, you're going to be like, why are they so giving? Why are they so nice? Boom, 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 whatever. Shadow, you'll make shadow projections. So continuing on, another sign is you say things like, I'm just not the creative type, or I'm not emotional. It's not that you can't be a creative type or that you don't have emotions. It's just that you haven't owned that aspect of you. You overcompensate with the opposite energy, meaning you have a lack in you have a certain weakness. So you just strengthen things you're already strong in. So for example, let's say the someone that's very dominant in the everyman, he has no outlaw within him. So he just tries to conform as much as possible to compensate. And he thinks that's going to get him places and lead to his happiness. Another one is you feel blocked, stuck, or lifeless in certain areas of life. That's why you have to take an inventory of like, what are the areas of life that I'm feeling blocked and stuck in? And then what are the corresponding archetypes that can help me unblock that area of life and make it better? That realization alone can change so much for you. And this whole process of accepting certain archetypes, of becoming more whole, as in what I call more versatile, meaning you're not just ego identified with this small archetype right here or these small archetypes right here. You are more broad in what you accept within yourself. This is individuation. This is what I want in life. I'm going to go down this path, and I'm also going to explore my inner world. I'm going to explore the outer world. I'm going to explore my inner world. I'm going to integrate the things I need to integrate so that I can actually materialize my path, my dharma, whatever. So the path of individuation requires facing and reclaiming the archetypes you've rejected, shamed, or ignored. Lastly, signs you've owned an archetype, you don't have to have conscious thought of performing it. You simply do it because you are it. It's also known as unconscious competence. For example, if you're learning tennis and you start getting really good, you don't start being consciously aware of how to swing the tennis racket anymore because you already know how to do it. You've done it so many times, the subconscious just does it on autopilot. That's the same thing with archetypes. Once you've owned something so much, when the situation calls for it, you will subconsciously tap into that archetype. But at first, it will be very conscious, especially if you're not necessarily using like maybe meditative audios as a way to program your subconscious mind, which I recommend. Reach out to me for that. Also, reach out to me if you'd like a custom made guided meditation for what you want to work on. I can help with that too. Next, you're comfortable with it in yourself and within others. So you're comfortable with embodying the archetype and you're comfortable with seeing it from other people. I get excited when I see people showcase knowledge. I get excited when I see people joking around. I get excited when people show their confidence. I get excited when people manifest things in their life. Magician power. So if there are archetypes you see within others and a part of you jolts or a part of you gets like this whatever, chest pain, anxiety, whatever, it's a telltale sign that within you, you haven't owned it within you. And then, of course, you view it as normal and necessary. You see the advantages of that given archetype. I'm gonna wrap the video right there. Hope you gain a lot of value from this. If you need help on this, we talk a lot about this in my identity resonance program. If you are interested in joining the program or learning more about the program, I'll leave a link to the form in the description box. Fill out that form, and you can from there you can schedule a time to speak with me to learn more about the program. Uh, very excited to all the people. Very excited about all the people that recently booked a call. Again, link in the description. But I'm going to end the video right there. Hope this was very valuable. Take care. Peace.